What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me. Today's tutorial is this text effect where you could swap out the text for your name, your company name, or maybe even a greeting. There's no link to the palette in this particular design as I used one of the built-in ones in Procreate, which its name is Campfire. You'll be able to find it in the palette section right towards the bottom. If you're new here, I post Procreate tutorials every week, so if you'd like a tutorial to follow along with, hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell so you get notified once my new videos go live. And as always, if you like the tutorial, please hit the like button down below. It helps the channel out a lot and pushes my videos out to more people. And with that said, let's get started. So we're going to create a new canvas and we're going to come up to the plus icon. And for this one, I'm just going to use the screen size for this one. So this one may vary depending on which iPad you use. Now what we want to do is add our text onto the canvas. So let's go to our wrench icon in the top left. And under add, we're going to go add text. And for this one, I'm going to use my account name. So we're going to use Joel Create. And for this one, I'm going to also make sure that the text is in capitals only. Just makes it a bit easier so you've got less rounding. And so you can see the font that I'm going to use is the default one, which is ENA 01. And I'm going to set it to bold. So I'm just going to highlight all my text. I'm going to change the option here from semi-bold to bold, just so it's nice and easy to use. I'm going to hit done. Now, obviously at this point, you can use whatever text you like for your design. It could be your name, it could be company name, it could be, whatever you want it to be. And I'm also going to make this over 2 lines as well. So obviously Joel and then Joel Create. So let's duplicate that layer for me and bring that one down. And you can double tap on the text to go straight to the editor. And I'm going to go to my text. I'm going to change mine to create. And just position that where I want it. Now, for my design, I want to make sure, first of all, that the text is straight down the middle. So when you go to the cursor icon, if you go to snapping, you can make sure that this toggle is turned on. And with that said, you can see the orange line straight down the middle of the canvas, so you know your text is smack bang in the middle. Now, for me, that's fine, and I'm just going to scale down the Joel part, just so it's a little bit smaller. Something along those lines is pretty cool. So once you've added your text to your canvas, we can then position it where we need it, so we can then start to add all the effects onto it. Now what we want to do is we want to swipe on the 2 pieces of text that I've created. Obviously your design will vary. So if you've got 2, simply tap on one and swipe it to the left on the other layer. And then when you hit the cursor, you can move both of them at the same time. Now what I want to do is I want to move it straight towards the top half of the screen, because we're going to drag all the lines out from it and we'll move it back down into the middle of the screen, and then we can hide the focal point towards the bottom. So once we've got our 2 layers, on the initial layer, and if you don't have one, just create a new one, we're going to want to create a focal point on the screen. Now this is really simple to do. All we're going to do is go to our color picker, we're going to double tap in the top left or top right hand corner, and we're going to go to our brush library, and under calligraphy, we're going to use the monoline brush, and I've maxed it out on the left hand side there, so it's 100% in size. And all we're going to do is simply just add a dot where we think the middle is. And then we're going to grab our cursor icon. And because we've got snapping turned on, should be able to just drag that into position and get the orange line to say it's smack bang in the middle. Now, once you've got it close to the middle, you can also make it a bit smaller and again, drag it onto that line like so. Now, what this will do is, if I zoom out, this will give us our focal point for where we're going to drag all our lines into. It just makes it a little bit easier, so we can just drag those lines in and we know exactly where they need to end up rather than sort of guesstimating. And so now we can progress into the line effects. So let's go to our layers. First of all, let's turn off the create, so the bottom row. I'm going to start on the top row for Joel. Again, this will vary depending on what text you've added. And with that Joel, I'm going to create a new layer. And with Joel and the new layer selected, I'm going to group them together. Now Joel needs to be at the top here, so the new layer is underneath. Now the palette I'm using is the Campfire Palette, which is a built-in palette for Procreate. When you go to palettes and scroll all the way to the very bottom, there's a number of different variations on some built-in palettes that they have. So I'm going to use the Campfire for this one if you want to follow along with the same colors. So I'm going to select the first color in the top left hand corner, and I'm just going to make my way all the way across from left to right for this design. So when I go back to my layers, on the new layer, continuing to use the monoline brush under calligraphy. This time we're going to scale that down roughly to say 2%, nice and small. And the simple process with this is to start on the corner of your text, draw a straight line and hold your pen down on the screen, and you'll get a perfectly straight line. And all you want to do is just position it towards that point that we created, and then repeat that process for all of the outer points of the text. And you just want to make sure you get as close to the edge of the text as possible, and then just drag a straight line in to that point. Now the curved text is a little bit harder to do sometimes. You just got to take a stab and then drag that line out towards our focal point. Now they all end up at the same point down here, and then when I zoom in to the text, we've got our lines coming off. Now at this point you could make adjustments before you proceed, just to make sure that they come straight off at the corners. But now what we want to do is then link all of those lines together so we can drag and drop the colour in. So what we're going to do is, with our monoline brush still selected, just draw a line. Now you can't really see because it's behind the text, but I'm going to show you just sort of there that I've linked all the lines together. Now I should be able to drag and drop my colour in like so, and then touch up any little small gaps that may be made. Now this is a typical area to keep an eye on. Down at the focal point, there's a couple of little points that will potentially stay white. And then when we pinch out with 2 fingers, we've got our J now all sorted. And then before we proceed, we'll just add the shading in here quickly, and then we can repeat the process for every letter in the style of this design. So let's create a new layer above our green layer here. And then all we're going to do is set the layer option by tapping on the N to soft light. And then while we're there, let's just drag that percentage of opacity down to 50%. And then go to your color picker in the top right hand corner under the disc, and double tap at the bottom to select black. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this layer here is also clipped to the green in my design that I just added. So let's tap on clipping mask, and then you add the shadows where you want them. Now for mine, I'm going to make sure all the shadows are towards the bottom edge of all the letters, and with something curved you've just got to make a guess sort of midway through the curve essentially of where that shadow is hitting. And same process, you just create a straight line down towards your focal point, hold your pen and create a perfectly straight line, and you'll be able to add in the shadow like so. And then again, repeat the same process again, where we just link up the shape by drawing in and linking our lines, and then drag and drop the colour in like so. And now I've got the shading for the J letter, and I can move on to the O. So that's the same principle that you can use for this design and apply to all the different letters in your text. I'm going to continue to draw out the Joel Create, because then you'll see what it looks like across 2 different lines. I'm going to create a new layer for our letter O, and I'm going to go to my color picker, and I'm going to select the second green on the top row now. And on this layer, I'm going to repeat the process again. So I'm going to go from the edge of the letter down to my focal point, and again on the left hand side as well. Now I went a bit too high there, so you got a little bit of bleed over, and just meet up to my focal point like that. Now with the O, obviously you've got the inside of the letter to handle as well. So all we need to do is just simply, again as always, we need to create a linked up shape. So we just need to start here, I'm going all the way around, and I'm meeting up to my end point here, and then drag and drop the colour in, because we need the colour with inside the O as well. And let's repeat the same shading process. So let's create a new layer above our green for the O. Let's tap on that layer and make sure it's a clipping mask. We're going to change the layer options from normal to soft light, and we're going to lower the opacity down to 50%. And that's the same rule for every letter across the whole design. So let's go back to our color picker and now double tap at the bottom of the disc to select black. And now you have to accommodate for the fact that we've obviously got the hole in the O. So there's a few things. First of all, I want to just fill that in straight away. So I'm just going to make my brush size 100% and I'm going to fill in the center of the O, because if the lighting's coming from the top down, the entirety of the inside of the O would be shaded. And then I'm going to reduce my brush size back down to 2%. And then just like the J, we want to sort of aim for the midpoint of the curve of the O and drag that in to our focal point towards the bottom. And likewise on this side too, and then drag and drop that in like so. And then link up the shape going from left to right with those two new lines, dragging in the black, and we get our shading for the letter O as well. So now we can move on to the E and then the L, but we obviously, when we get to the L, we just need to make sure our layering is in the correct order. So we'll get to that when we come to it. Now we can move on to the E. So let's create a new layer. Go back to the color picker, and this is the third letter, so third color on the top row. And then continuing to use the monoline brush, drag out. You can either drag from the center point upwards, or you can go vice versa and go from the letter down. Now you can start either from the center point and make your way up to the letter, or you can go the other way like we did with the other letters, and then simply drag all your lines down towards the focal point, like so. And then we need to do the inside of the E as well. Now you'll notice you don't need to do every single edge of the letter. If it helps you when you come to adding in your lines, by all means do so, just so that you can make sure you get the whole letter filled in. But essentially all we need to work on is the very outer. Like for example, I don't need to do this corner because it will be encapsulated in the color. And now, as before, I'm linking up my shapes. So you can see I'm drawing, from left to right there to link those two up. I need to link these two up, and I need to link these two up. And now I should be able to just drag and drop my color in to all the white space in between the lines. Now the E, for example, in my design makes it a little bit trickier in terms of dragging and dropping the color in, but you can always go back in with your monoline brush turned up to 100%, just like I did there, and just make sure you fill in any gaps like so. And now with the E, obviously we've got the light coming from the top. We need to then create the shading. So we're going to shade in here, we're going to shade here, and we're going to shade the bottom half of the E as well. So same rules apply. We create a new layer above that. We tap on that layer, make sure it's a clipping mask. We change the opacity down to 50%, or roughly there. And then we also change the layer style to soft light. And then we go to our colors, double tap to select black, and then drag in from the corner of the E down, go down to our focal point. Now with this particular letter, obviously the E goes all the way to the edge, so we can simply just go all the way across like so, and then very loosely go all the way around and meet our line down here and drag and drop the color in. So all I did there was just draw outside the lines. Because it's a clipping mask, you only see what you are clipped to underneath. And then when we zoom into the E, both parts of this E would actually be shaded because it's with inside the E itself, and the light wouldn't hit it. So all I can do here is drag my brush up to 100% and simply paint both of those in like so, and we've got the lighting correct for that letter as well. Now, because of how this effect works, it works in a very central, an outward spread in terms of the letters and the lines. This L, if I continued with the same fashion with our layers, it would in fact be on top of the E. Now, all we've got to do is take a look at our layers, and we can see the layer we just created for the E itself. So we need to create a new layer underneath it, because we need the colors that we use for the L to be underneath the E. So I've created a new layer there, and then we just continue with the same rules. We grab the yellow now because it's the fourth color on the top row, fourth color in, and continuing to use the monoline back down to 2%. I can simply drag out and repeat the process for all the different points. Now, the only thing to bear in mind is once we start adding a lot more text, you start to have parts overlap, so you won't be able to see potentially your line fully. And then I'm linking up my shape as we did before, and then drag and drop the color in. And repeat the process for the shading. So one new layer, we tap on it to make sure it's a clipping mask, so it's clipped to the yellow. we change the opacity of that layer down to 50%. And then we change the layer option to soft light. And we revert our brush color back to black. We double tap at the bottom of the disc and we get black. This L is nice and simple. We simply work from this corner all the way down into our focal point and then go all the way across, go all the way around and meet our point down there and drag and drop the color in. And that's it for the top row. We've got our letters all colored in, we've got our shading all done, and we simply repeat the process for the word underneath. Now at the beginning, when we created a group for this, it was done on purpose so that we can quickly turn that off and then work on Joel Create, you know, the second word freely without the Joel part being in the way. Now again, at this point, this depends on your design and whether or not you have created a 2-line design or just a single line of text. So I'm going to turn Create on again, and I'm going to create a new layer above it, swipe those two together and create a group, and then just arrange that so that Create is above our blank new layer. So I'm going to go to my colors under the color picker, and I'm going to select the 5th color now on the top row and repeat the entire process for this second word as well. So as we did before, we simply start on the edge of the letter and make our way towards our focal point like so. And with this C, you've got to try and gauge roughly whereabouts the line would start to appear around that top curve. So roughly that is ideal. And then go all the way around, link up our shape. And just to show you what I'm doing there, if I turn that off, you can simply see I've drawn a terrible line in there, but I've just linked up my lines together. And then I'm going to drag and drop the color back in. And we're going to repeat the process for the shading. New layer above. Tap on that layer to make sure it's clipped to the color you just created. We're going to turn the layer options to soft light and lower the opacity down to 50%. And let's go to our colors and double tap to select black. And let's add in the shading again. So roughly halfway across the curve, it sits around here. Drag and drop down to our focal point. And let's go all the way around and get this part filled in first, like so. And then let's work on what would and wouldn't be shaded in here. Now the bottom edge of the C would, let's go all the way down to our point. Like so. And then drag and drop the color into that gap as well. So you can see I've left a little bit of a lighter patch towards the top there. So now we added this one in. This is a good example of a shape where the shading here goes all the way down, but in fact this part here is incorrect. The shading, you know, this part here, which should still be the solid color. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the eraser. I'm going to turn that down to 2% or 1%, and I'm using the monoline brush again. Just turn that down to 2 so everything matches. And I want to erase this part of the shadow because it's not technically correct. And I want to erase this part here because it's not technically correct. Now, if we zoom out to the point where we can see our focal point, we want to erase this part here because it's not technically correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at our focal point, go all the way out, hold your pen down as well, and you're going to match up to that corner like so. And now everything shy of this line here, this one that we just erased, we can now go in and get rid of all of that color. So what we can do is we can just potentially make our brush size just big enough that we may be able to create a straight line and erase quite a big chunk of it out in one go, like so. And then let's zoom in and erase the rest. Roughly like that. So you can see now that the shading itself sits in behind this part of the C because that's obviously how it would work in reality, and this would sit technically in front of that. So now when we go back to continuing with our shading, we've got the inside of the C to do, and for this we just want to start roughly here and then drag down, but we don't want to go all the way down to the focal point, otherwise we'll make the same mistake we just did with the line overlapping this part here, which shouldn't be shaded. And then what we're going to do is just go all the way around and link up our shape and drag and drop the black in. So what that's done is it's created the shadow on the inside as well as the bottom half of this part here. And now we've got our nicely shaded C heading towards the point of the bottom. Now that was a trickier one just to get your head around a little bit, but the same rules then apply to all the other letters. So we'll see what other letters, particular in this design, crop up with the same features. So let's repeat the process then for the R. So let's create a new layer. Let's go to the colors and let's select then the 6th color in the palette. And then what we're going to do is just drag our lines in again. So position your canvas where it's nice and easy for you to do so. Drag and drop down to your focal point like that. And then let's go from the edge of the R here as well. And then I also need to do slightly further up from the edge here. Like so. And then what we can do is we can just go all the way around again, link up, and then drag and drop all our colour in like so. Making sure just to fill in any gaps down the bottom here. Now the R shouldn't be too much of a pain to do, so let's create a new layer above it. Tap on that layer to create a clipping mask. Change the layer option down to soft light and drop the opacity down to 50%. And let's go to the color disc, double tap at the bottom to select black. And then let's start shading in our R. And then again, go all the way around, link up like so, and then drag and drop the color in. Let's do the bottom of the R again. And then the other leg here. We'll call it a leg, the base of the letter. And then link up, drag and drop that in. Now from here we can start to work out what also needs to be filled in with the top half. Now, without doubt, the inside here also needs to be shaded in as well. So I'm just going to drag my brush size down. And again, just like the C, you want to try and guesstimate that line. So roughly something like that would make it towards the focal point. And then we can then also go all the way around here and then drag and drop the color in so that the inside of the R is nicely colored in, but this edge here, we don't want it to be shaded. Then we've also got this corner here. This line obviously faces down, and then we drag and drop that line right in like so. And because of the way the angles work with this one, I can go around and link up to my shadow and drag and drop the color in like so. And then the final part would be this one here, where I'm going to essentially guesstimate that line again like so, and then link that line up to my shadows. And that's what it's all about. It's about linking up your shadows all together, because ultimately they just form one big layer. And let's move on to the E. Let's create a new layer. Let's move to the 7th color in the design, which is this one here. And then let's repeat the process with the monoline brush. So start on this edge here, down to my focal point. This edge here also down to the focal point. And up here too. Now just like the E above, there's a lot of these little layers in terms of their lines. And you just got to then link them all up again. And drag and drop our colour in like so, filling in any gaps like so. Now let's repeat the shading process for this letter as well. So let's create a new layer, tap on it, clipping mask, change the layer options of opacity down to 50% and the layer option itself down to soft light. And then remembering to change your color of your disc to black. Now straight off the bat, we've got quite a lot of flat surfaces that all face the bottom here. So first of all, the bottom half of this E is going to be completely dark, so I can get away with making my brush size 100% here, and then literally just filling in the entire, because all the bottom half of the E itself is facing down, and therefore no light would hit it at all. And we can pretty much also guesstimate that if I drag this line all the way down to my focal point, you can see pretty much the angles in which we can get away with for this top half up here. So there's a slither here of light and a slither here of light that we'll need to accommodate for. So I'm just going to erase this one here because I used it as a guide, but the top line can stay. And I'm just going to drag my colour out like so and paint that in. And then I can also do the same from this corner down to my focal point and get an idea of what would remain, which is just this inside part here. And then I can either grab the monoline brush and fill that all in like so. And we get a nice little slither of light there on the inside of the E. And now let's move on to the A. So let's select the 8th colour in this palette, which would be this one here. And with the monoline brush back down to 2% where I changed it a little bit higher. I'm going to repeat the process. So drag and drop down towards our focal point. Likewise the bottom half of the A as well. And I can go all the way around with the A, nice and simple this one, and drag and drop my colour in like so. And let's create our shading layer, so let's create a new one. Let's tap on that layer and make it a clipping mask. Let's change the opacity down to 50% and let's go to soft light. And let's select black again. And then let's drag our lines in like so. And this one go across here, and because of the way the A is, we can go across here and then around the design and meet up at the focal point and drag and drop that in. The A is a nice one. And then we can go from this corner here also down to the focal point, and likewise here as well, which then deals with the inside of the A. Go all the way across here, link up, drag and drop that in, and then we can just do this last part here on the left hand side for the bottom of the A. So my line was slightly off there. And then go across all the way around, link up and drag and drop the colour in. And now we've got that really cool effect. The A is a pretty cool one for this style, looks awesome. And what we can do is, I think we can just get away with just filling in the inside like that, nice and dark. So let's move on to the T. Now, just as we did with the top row of the wording, we need to make sure that the T lines go behind the letter A here. So we need to find our A, which is that one there. Underneath, tap on the layer underneath and create a new layer. And then we can then carry on. So let's go to the 9th colour in the palette, which will be this one here. And drop our brush size back down to 2%. And let's drag our lines in to our focal point like so, including this point here and the very edge like up there. And then we just need to link up all these lines together, so create a line here to link them two together. Let's just double check that these two are linked together, and let's go across here and link these two together, and then we'll be able to drag our colour in to all the gaps like so, and fill in any little gaps at the bottom there. And then repeat the shading process. A new layer, tap on that layer and make sure it's a clipping mask, change the opacity down to 50% or thereabouts, and choose the option of soft light, and then go to our color picker and double tap on the disc towards the bottom to select black. And on this layer, let's just do the very bottom of the T here down to the focal point and go all the way around and link up like so. This bottom half of the T here would also be completely dark, so I can get away with making my brush size nice and big for that one, and then bring it back down to 2. And then this corner here needs to go all the way down to the focal point down here. So we're doing all the bottom edge of every letter and then down towards the focal point again. Drag and drop that colour in. And now again, the T is quite close to the A in terms of how cool it is in terms of its lighted areas compared to its shaded areas. And the final letter is then the final E, but we also want to make sure now it's behind this letter T because it's on the outside. So we find the T that we just did, tap on the layer below it and create a new layer, and then simply select the colour that you're going to need for it. Now I'm just going to come down a row to this one here, so far right, and use that colour there And I'm going to go from the top corner all the way down to the focal point. Far right edge of the E here, down to the focal point. And then all of these points here need to be a bit closer that time to the focal point. Like so. And then as always, we just need to link up all our lines together. So let's go from this line to this line. Then we follow that one down, we can create a link here and a link here. Now again, as always, just turn your letters off if you want to just make sure that they're all linked together. You can get all of the nasty pieces of work underneath that are pretty messy, but it's not to worry with this design. And then drag and drop the colour into all of the different sections, like so. Filling in any little gaps that are left towards the bottom here. And let's add in our final shading layer, so let's create a new layer above it. Tap on that to select clipping mask. Change the layer opacity down to 50%. And let's also change the layer option down to soft light. And going back to our colour, double tap at the bottom to select black. And with the monoline, we're just going to get the last little bit of shading in here. So from that corner all the way down to the E, I can go all the way across here, all the way around and link up to that line. Like so. And now, because of the way the E is positioned in this case, both inside parts here would be completely shaded, so I can go in here and fill them both in. Now if I pinch out with 2 fingers, we've got create done, and then if I go to my groups and collapse the create group and turn on the Joel group, we've got both of them done now, and we've got all the lighting and shading added in there, which looks really cool. And then what we can do is let's change the text color from black to white. You could leave it as black, you could also change the color to any color you like. I like it where you change the color to white, so let's go to edit, tap on the layer and go to edit text, and then highlight all the text and change the color from black to white, so double tap in the top left hand corner to select white, and then repeat that and collapse that group down and go to the other group for the top line, tap on that and go edit text, double tap again to select all of it and change the color from black to white. And now I like this effect because it doesn't outline all the text completely. Sometimes you have to take a second look just to make sure, what does it spell? Like this E here, there's enough of its sort of shape in terms of its shading and the lines coming off of it to know what the letter is. And likewise, potentially the J at the top there, you take a second to look, but you can get the idea. And that's part of the effect here. I think it looks really cool. And then what we can do is we can turn off our focal point like so. And in reality, you could leave it exactly like this. I think that looks pretty cool. But what you could also do is collapse your group down and swipe on the other group to select them both at the same time. And then grab your cursor and simply just drag them towards the center of the design, roughly around about that mark there. And then when you let go and pinch out with 2 fingers, you get the finished effect where we've got the lines all coming off with a nice shading, and it really punches out. And just a cool little effect to play with in Procreate. Procreate doesn't have any text effects by default, so you just have to work with the program and create your own. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please hit the like button down below. It helps the channel out a lot and it sends my videos out to more people. And if you're new here, I post Procreate tutorials every week. So if you're interested in having a weekly tutorial to follow along with, hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the bell so you get notified about all my new videos. And as always, be sure to share your designs with me on Instagram. I love seeing your creations, you putting your own twist on it, changing the palette potentially, and just everything that you guys come up with. That's the whole basis of these tutorials. I want to give you guys the inspiration to go off and potentially add your own little touch and your own little flavor. Links to both my Instagram and TikTok are in the description down below. And shout out to my Patreons whose generosity has allowed me to purchase this brand new mic for this video. So if you've managed to stay around to the end of this outro, drop a comment down below to let me know how it sounded. I think it sounds pretty good. So that's it, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.